guys, it's Emma and I'm back today for you with another video, and today I am going to be essentially ranking books from the original Dune saga from my least favorite to my favorite, all right? And these are all 6 books written by Frank Herbert, and these are gonna be my personal rankings, my list, all right? These opinions are completely my own. Why I like certain Dune books, why I don't like other Dune books. Now, this video is going to be filled with spoilers, okay? I want to be able to talk fully in depth. So if you haven't read the Dune books and you don't want to be spoiled, wouldn't watch this video. Before we actually start, I would really appreciate it if you guys would look down in the description box for all the links there that I have for you guys pertaining to stuff going on in the world right now. For example, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, what's going on in Sudan, what's going on in Haiti, everything of the sort, right? So with that being said, all those links down there will be there for you guys to interact with and to share. And then down in the comment section, let me know whether or not you guys have read any of the Dune books, which one's y'all's favorite, which one is y'all's least favorite. So with that being said, let's just get right on into it. So my least favorite book in the Dune series, okay, is Chapterhouse Dune, okay, number 6 on my list. I actually DNF'd this book. This is the only Dune book that I have read that I have not finished. It honestly felt like a spin-off. It honestly felt like it was moving away from everything that the first 5 books had talked about, especially considering what happens to Dune, like Arrakis, like the planet in Heretics. So it's like, okay, no, Dune itself is gone. So, you know, y'all kind of gotta lock it up, which in my opinion, they just didn't. And also, I know that a lot of my frustration with Chapterhouse comes from how much I thoroughly enjoyed Heretics, all right? So it really was just a shame that Chapterhouse had to come after the masterpiece that was Heretics. Chapterhouse was so boring compared to Heretics. We were at page 130 something, maybe like a 5th or a 6th of the way through the book. Nothing had happened, and I just can't deal with that. Sorry. Number 5 on my list, and my next least favorite Dune book in the series is Dune Messiah. All right, it was way more political than Dune was. And I don't say that because I don't like political intrigue in books. I love political intrigue. I love Children of Dune, all right? And Children of Dune is chock full of that. It's just that the political intrigue in this book got to be so philosophical, and I'm not a philosophy girl. All right, I'm just not. It was also just a lot more confusing, I found, but I really did enjoy the full circle with Paul. I cried at the end of Dune Messiah, all right, when Paul walks into the desert. Oh gosh, it was such a bittersweet ending, but at the same time, it was so right, because just everything that's happened with Paul and the Atreides and what Paul started out with and then what he became. And, you know, it just, the full circle was great. I really loved that. But unfortunately, that full circle effect could not save Messiah for me. The next Dune book on my list, which is number 4, all right, is also number 4 in the series. And that's God, Emperor of Dune. Not gonna lie. When I picked up God, Emperor of Dune and I was reading the foreword, I was a little wary, okay? Because, you know, I finished the first 3, read the foreword of number 4, and Brian Herbert is basically like, yeah, no, a lot of people were complaining about how wordy the first 3 books in the series were. Well, guess what, girl? The last 3 books in the series are way wordier. And I'm like, that's great, man. That's marvelous. Because that was the one thing that I despise about this series. Frank Herbert's writing style is a little much. And I was surprised, all right, that I found it as decent as I did. The wordiness and the monologuing actually was understandable. It wasn't as abstract as it was in like the first half of the series, which again, I was very surprised about. That being said, however, I would never, ever want to have a conversation with Leto II because this man cannot give a straight answer to save his damn life. Another thing that I found really surprising about God, Emperor of Dune and Heretics as well, just the latter half of the series, I found to be very, very good at storytelling, not just the story of Dune itself, but storytelling in general. God Emperor actually has a pretty decent balance of plot / action and the wordiness and the monologuing. And I was like, oh wow, never thought I'd see that. Okay, because that's another thing that I don't like very much about the Dune Chronicles. There's so much telling and not enough showing, I think, in order to have that equilibrium there. But God Emperor of Dune, all right, Frank was pampering us, okay, because he said, oh, y'all wanted one battle scene, I'll give y'all 2, fully written out, with people dying. And I was like, I was also really fascinated by Leto II. It was very strange, all right, to see where he had come from in Children and then to see where he was in God Emperor. It was really interesting to see how just how he justified everything, you know what I mean? Because his whole thing is like, oh no, I'm not human, so I'm essentially above human reasoning and morale. And it's like, that is probably one of the scariest fucking things I've ever heard in my life. Okay, just the layers that he had as a tyrant, and also as he felt he had as a savior. It was very twisted. All of this praise that I'm giving God Emperor of Dune for the storytelling, the characters were lackluster, baby. Okay, I really only gave a shit about Leto II. Okay, he was really the only one that was given layers. Everybody else was kind of just two-dimensional. So even if you didn't like Leto II, you kind of were forced to focus on him because he was the only one that was really worth focusing on, if that makes sense. Number 3 on the list, all right, and that is Dune. Okay, the behemoth that it is, all right? Like, I could chuck this at somebody and it would hurt. It's the original story, it's the original book. And I remember when I was being pitched the idea of actually reading Dune, somebody said, oh yeah, no, the Atreides are essentially like the Starks. And I was like, so it's just space Game of Thrones, word? But my biggest gripe with it is it's, one, obviously the writing style, you know, with it being like so abstract in some places where it's like, okay, no, what the hell did I just read? I gotta read it like 3 more times. But also because of the telling and not showing thing, all right? Especially with the coup, okay? When the Harkonnens overthrow the Atreides and just slaughter them all, we get like right up until the chapter ends, and it ends, like, I assume we're gonna get a flyover of the coup, you know, people fighting, but no. The next chapter starts with a new character essentially telling us what happened when the coup ended 4 hours earlier. And it's like, what? That, in my opinion, that just completely ruins the stakes, because now it's like, oh, okay, we don't actually see anybody kill each other, so what's the point? What's scary about it? What is threatening the lives of these characters? Dune is not, it's good because it started out the whole thing. Now, we get to the top 2, okay? And the top 2, in my opinion, are the best in the series, all right? And number 2, which honestly comes very close to being number 1 some days, is Heretics of Dune. I've said however many times throughout this video that this series is kind of hard to understand given the abstractness of the monologuing and the wordiness of it. This book was monumentally easier to read. Everything that happened in this book, as opposed to everything else in the other books, was so plainly written out, so plainly spoken, so easy to understand, all right? And like I said, compared to all of the other books, this book was a breath of fresh damn air. Remember how I was talking about how God Emperor of Dune was really good at storytelling just in general, not even the plot of Dune itself? That's the same thing with Heretics. With Heretics in particular, the clues to all these secrets that we find out are so well laid out. They're not all bunched together in one space, so we have like a bunch of blank space in another, you know, where everything is laid out accordingly. And for all of these secrets that we find out, like from all the other books, all right, they're insidious as hell, okay? Like these axolotl tanks, they're not actually tanks. They're just women that they've hooked up to these tubes, okay? Like everything that we find out in this book has ramifications for how you see everything in the earlier books, which I just love, all right? Because now you have these eureka moments where it's like, holy shit, that's what they've been doing this whole time? The battle scenes, it adds more stakes. The battle scenes in Heretics were awesome. There is just one little thing that I wish Heretics had done, and that is describe the final battle on Dune, you know, that Teg fights in, that Teg actually leads, you know, before Dune is completely annihilated. And something else that I really, really like about this book is that it adds time progression, all right, noted time progression, okay, because we see a bunch of times through like Shiana and the new Duncangola that, you know, they say, oh yeah, no, I'm 17 years old right now, or it's been 4 years since that day, and that day was when I turned 12. All right, thank you. Now I know how old you are. You know what I mean? Now I know how much time has progressed to where now I'm just not hit in the face where it's like, oh yeah, no, we've spent months planning this assault. Really? It's been 2 pages. Not to mention the characters in Heretics are some of my favorites, like out of the whole series. All right, we got Lucilla, Odrade, Terraza, Shiana, Teg, etc. All right, they all have layers. So much more time is spent on them and not the wordiness or like the message behind the words, you know? We actually have characters who can relay said messages because they have the layers in order to do so. The only thing that keeps Heretics down in number 2 is the fact that I wish we'd seen more of the honored maters or matres, I don't quite know how to pronounce them, but essentially like the big villain, all right, in this book, the force that annihilates Arrakis. The honored maters were scary, all right, but they were only scary in the last 150 pages of the book when we actually saw them. You know, the entire time we'd only like heard like bits and pieces about, you know, them using sex essentially as a weapon, which is fucking horrifying, all right? How much they hated the Bene Gesserit, and just, I wish we'd seen more than just at the last 150 pages, because this is over 600. I thought they were really interesting, the idea of this essentially twisted mirror image of the Bene Gesserit, but unfortunately missed the mark. And then lastly, all right, my favorite book in the Dune series, and number 1 on my list is Children of Dune. This book is chock full of political intrigue. Everybody's making alliances with one another. Everybody's stabbing each other in the back. People are finding out secrets. People are completely undermining people's battle strategies. It's so good. And also just the characters, like what they go through, what their transformations are, like their arcs are really fun to watch. For example, Jessica, her going from being essentially the matriarch of the Atreides family to backpedaling and becoming Bene Gesserit again, and essentially becoming an outsider to the family that she sacrificed so much for. And then Leto II, all right? I vividly remember like towards the end, I was scared of Leto, okay? Because like he was fully creeping me out with just how detached and cold and monotone he was speaking. It was such a shift from how he was at the beginning. It was sad, honestly, to watch, because, you know, it's just like this whole thing of sacrificing, you know? People throughout Children of Dune are sacrificing something of themselves for what they believe to be the greater good, and it was very bittersweet to see that happen to Leto. And then Aaliyah and Paul's ends, okay? I liked Aaliyah, and it killed me to see what she became at the end of Children, all right? And when she fell out the window, and then when Paul, all right, when it turned out that the preacher was Paul, all right, I loved that, because I was like, oh my gosh, it's Paul. I was like, okay, no, he's gonna bring Aaliyah back. But to have Aaliyah die literally right after Paul was essentially murdered by a crowd, all right, and his body left on the street, it's just such the shifts from how these characters started off to how they end. It's so extreme. I fully sobbed at the end when Paul and Aaliyah died. I fully wept, just because we'd seen these characters grow, we'd seen all that they'd been through. It was just so much. This book has such a theme of sacrifice and tragedy. I just have 2 gripes. Okay, the first is the telling and not showing. A major skirmish happens that results in Paul's, aka the preacher's, death. All right, not only had Paul gotten a huge following, all right, but the preacher, particularly in this book, had gotten a huge following, and nothing happened after he was murdered. There were no consequences to this religious figure's death, this really famous religious figure's death, that turned out to be an even more famous religious figure, and nobody did anything, felt any type of way about this person literally being murdered in the streets. Like, I don't know. Tied into that, it's something that's a little bit more personal for me. I wish that we'd had like a mourning scene from Gurney. All right, because Gurney knows that Paul is alive. Gurney knows that Paul is the preacher. We had that scene. Gurney and Paul's relationship I love. I love their relationship. And the fact that we didn't see an emotional scene from Gurney finding out that Paul was not only dead, but killed. But at the end of the damn day, I don't think I could have handled it. So while I wish it was there, I'm also kind of glad it wasn't. And then my last gripe with this book is the jargon. Okay, as much as I love this book, because it is, I said it's my favorite. This book is probably the most abstract that the writing gets. Okay, like it was to the point where I had to have like a little chapter summary each time I finished a chapter to make sure that I knew what the fuck I just read. All right, and that gets tiring to do. So much of the dialogue, not even the internal monologuing, but the dialogue between these characters was so hard to understand at best, and then rambling and overcomplicated at worst. Nevertheless, this is my favorite Dune book, okay, because of the emotional attachment that I have to just how these characters end. It was just so good. It was so good to read. All right, you guys, so this is my ranking of least favorite Dune book to my favorite Dune book and everybody in between, right? Now it's on to Brian Herbert's works. All right, I have House Atreides with me. It's time to see what all the hubbub about Brian Herbert's works is, okay? Because it seems that you either hate it with everybody else, or if you like it, you are stoned in the streets. So I want to know what all the hatred is about. So you guys, with that being said, I hope that you guys have enjoyed. I hope that you guys will continue to look out for more stuff on my channel. I hope that you guys are staying safe. And lastly, I hope that you guys have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.